Some of Australia's most interesting coin discoveries didn't start in a collection, they started as ordinary pocket change. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're revealing 3 Australian 20-cent coins that continue to attract the attention of collectors. 1974 Australian 20 cents, no mint mark. 1999 Australian 20 cents, no mint mark. 1981 Australian 20 cents, no mint mark. These coins feature the famous platypus reverse design and a durable copper-nickel composition. Although millions were produced for circulation, collectors still examine them for rare die varieties, minting errors, and unusual details that can make certain coins far more interesting than they first appear. One of today's coins has a detail that many people pass right by without ever noticing. Watch until the very end, you may never look at an Australian 20-cent coin the same way again. Now, let's uncover coin number 1. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a worn Australian 20-cent coin that most people wouldn't even notice. The edges are smooth from decades of circulation, the surface is covered with tiny scratches, and the once bright silver color has faded with time. To almost everyone, it's just another 20-cent piece. But to experienced collectors, every old Australian coin tells a story, and sometimes that story begins with the smallest detail. The first coin in today's countdown is the 1974 Australian 20 cents, a standard circulation coin issued by the Commonwealth of Australia. Like all Australian circulation coins of its era, it carries no mint mark, something completely normal for this series. Yet despite being a familiar coin, the 1974 issue continues to attract the attention of collectors who enjoy searching through old collections, inherited coin jars, and everyday change. By 1974, Australia's decimal currency system had already become an established part of daily life. Millions of Australians handled 20-cent coins every day for shopping, transport, and countless ordinary purchases. Few imagined that decades later, these same coins would become fascinating pieces of Australian numismatic history. The obverse features the elegant portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold McCann, surrounded by the inscriptions Elizabeth II, Australia, and the date 1974. For many Australians, this portrait became one of the most recognizable images ever placed on the nation's circulating coins. Turn the coin over, and one of Australia's most iconic native animals appears. The reverse features the beautifully detailed platypus, designed by Stuart Devlin. Floating across calm water, the platypus has become one of the most recognizable reverse designs in Australian coinage. The denomination 20 and the word cents complete a design that has remained a favorite among collectors for generations. The 1974 Australian 20-cent coin was struck from a durable copper-nickel composition, allowing it to survive decades of everyday circulation. As millions of these coins passed from hand to hand, most gradually lost their original mint luster. Fine scratches, contact marks, worn high points, and dull surfaces became part of each coin's individual history. Yet experienced collectors rarely judge a coin by appearance alone. Under magnification, they carefully examine the Queen's portrait, the lettering, the rim, and the intricate details of the platypus. They search for authenticated double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other genuine mint-made varieties that may have occurred during production. Most 1974 Australian 20-cent coins reveal nothing unusual, and that's exactly what makes the search so exciting. Every ordinary-looking coin has the potential to teach collectors something about Australia's rich minting history, and every careful inspection could uncover a detail that countless others have overlooked. A coin doesn't have to be centuries old to tell an incredible story. Sometimes, the most fascinating discoveries begin with a coin that millions of people have handled without giving it a second thought. That's exactly what makes the 1974 Australian 20 cents so interesting to collectors today. Every 1974 20-cent coin started as a carefully prepared copper-nickel planchet before being struck under tremendous pressure at the Royal Australian Mint. Within a fraction of a second, the detailed portrait of Queen Elizabeth II and the graceful platypus reverse were permanently impressed into the metal. It was a fast and highly precise process, but like any large-scale minting operation, small production variations could occasionally occur. This is why experienced collectors never stop at simply reading the date. Instead, they carefully inspect the Queen's portrait, lettering, numerals, rim, and every detail of the platypus design under magnification. They look for authenticated double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, and other genuine mint-made varieties that may have occurred during production. The platypus reverse receives particularly close attention. Collectors study the sharpness of the animal's body, the waterlines beneath it, the lettering, and the overall strike quality. Even subtle differences in detail can make one example far more interesting than another, especially when professionally authenticated. After more than 50 years, most surviving 1974 Australian 20-cent coins now display the signs of long circulation. Light scratches cover the fields, the highest points of the design have become smooth, the rim may show small nicks, and the original mint brilliance has largely disappeared. These characteristics are completely normal and simply reflect decades of everyday use throughout Australia. Occasionally, a collector encounters a coin that appears different from the rest. When that happens, professional grading and authentication become essential. Specialists determine whether the unusual feature was created during the minting process or resulted from damage after the coin entered circulation. That distinction is critical because only genuine mint-made varieties, recognized die varieties, or exceptional high-grade examples typically receive greater collector attention. It's important to remember that most 1974 Australian 20-cent coins are common circulation coins and are generally worth only their face value in heavily worn condition. Coins that attract stronger collector interest are usually those with professionally authenticated mint errors, recognized varieties, or outstanding preservation. Perhaps that's the real appeal of the 1974 Australian 20 cents. It reminds us that an ordinary-looking coin can carry decades of Australian history, quietly passing from one generation to the next while waiting for someone curious enough to take a closer look. Most people never stop to look at an Australian 20-cent coin. It changes hands in supermarkets, disappears into parking meters, and ends up forgotten in jars or drawers. But every so often, a collector picks up one ordinary-looking coin and begins studying details that almost everyone else ignores. The second coin in today's countdown is the 1999 Australian 20 cents, another standard circulation issue of the Commonwealth of Australia. Like other regular Australian circulation coins of this period, it carries no mint mark, which is completely normal. At first glance, it appears no different from thousands of other 20-cent coins, yet it continues to be a favorite among collectors who enjoy examining modern Australian coinage. By 1999, Australia's decimal currency had been part of everyday life for more than 3 decades. The 20-cent coin remained one of the country's busiest circulating denominations, passing through countless wallets, cash registers, vending machines, and bankrolls every single day. Few people imagined these coins would later become interesting pieces of Australia's numismatic history. The obverse features the elegant portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Ian Rank Broadley. Around the portrait appear the inscriptions Elizabeth II, Australia, and the date 1999. This updated royal portrait marked a new chapter in Australian circulating coinage while maintaining the nation's long tradition of honouring the monarch. Turn the coin over and one of Australia's most beloved native animals immediately catches the eye. The famous platypus reverse, designed by Stuart Devlin, continues to represent the 20-cent denomination. With detailed water ripples surrounding the swimming platypus, the reverse remains one of the most distinctive designs found on modern Australian coins. Like other circulation issues, the 1999 Australian 20-cent coin was struck from a durable copper-nickel composition, allowing it to withstand years of heavy use. Over time, most examples lost their original mint brilliance. Small scratches, contact marks, worn details, and dull surfaces gradually became part of each coin's unique journey through Australian commerce. Rather than focusing only on the date, experienced collectors carefully inspect the Queen's portrait, lettering, rim, numerals, and every detail of the platypus reverse. Under magnification, they search for authenticated double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other genuine mint-made varieties that may have occurred during production. Most 1999 Australian 20-cent coins prove to be ordinary circulation pieces, and that's exactly why collectors enjoy the hunt. Every coin offers another opportunity to discover a tiny production detail that millions of people may have overlooked. The longer collectors study Australian coins, the more they realize that the most interesting discoveries rarely happen at first glance. Instead, they happen under careful inspection, where tiny details can reveal a story that years of circulation have almost hidden. That's one reason the 1999 Australian 20 cents continues to attract attention from both new and experienced collectors. Every one of these coins began as a precisely manufactured copper-nickel planchet before entering the coining presses of the Royal Australian Mint. In a single powerful strike, the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II appeared on one side while Australia's famous platypus reverse was impressed onto the other. Although the minting process was highly advanced, every working die gradually experienced normal whereas millions of coins were produced. For collectors, that is where the real investigation begins. Instead of simply checking the date, specialists examine the Queen's portrait, the lettering, the numerals, the rim, and the intricate details of the platypus. They search for authenticated doubled dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, and other genuine mint-made varieties that may have developed during production. While these characteristics are uncommon, discovering one can completely change how a particular coin is viewed by the collecting community. The reverse design deserves just as much attention as the obverse. Collectors study the sharpness of the platypus, the water ripples, the denomination, and the surrounding lettering. Coins with unusually strong strike quality often stand out immediately when compared with heavily worn examples. After more than 2 decades of circulation, most 1999 Australian 20-cent coins show clear signs of everyday use. Light scratches cover the surface, contact marks interrupt the fields, the highest parts of the design become smooth, and the original mint luster has almost completely disappeared. These are normal characteristics for a coin that has spent years moving through Australian commerce. Occasionally, however, a collector notices something unusual. When that happens, professional grading and authentication become essential. Experts determine whether the feature is a genuine result of the minting process or simply damage that occurred after the coin entered circulation. That distinction is extremely important because only authenticated mint-made varieties, recognized die varieties, or exceptional high-grade examples typically receive stronger collector interest. It's also important to remember that most 1999 Australian 20-cent coins found in circulation are common coins and are generally worth only their face value in heavily worn condition. Higher collector premiums are usually associated with professionally authenticated mint errors, recognized varieties, or coins preserved in outstanding condition. Perhaps that's why the 1999 Australian 20 cents remains so enjoyable to collect. It reminds us that every ordinary-looking coin has traveled its own unique journey through Australia's history, and sometimes, the most interesting stories begin with a coin that almost everyone else would have ignored. The final coin in today's countdown begins with a question that many collectors ask themselves every time they sort through old Australian change. How many interesting coins have been overlooked simply because they look too ordinary? That question brings us to the 1981 Australian 20 cents, a standard circulation coin issued by the Commonwealth of Australia. Like other regular Australian 20-cent coins of its era, it carries no mint mark, which is completely normal. Yet despite its familiar appearance, this issue continues to attract attention from collectors who understand that every coin has a story waiting to be discovered. When the 1981 Australian 20-cent coin entered circulation, it quickly became part of everyday Australian life. It paid for bus fares, newspapers, groceries, and countless daily purchases. Millions of these coins traveled from one city to another, passing through thousands of hands before eventually finding their way into piggy banks, coin jars, and old collections. The obverse displays the timeless portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold McKinn. Surrounding the portrait are the inscriptions Elizabeth II, Australia, and the date 1981. For many Australians, this portrait became one of the defining symbols of the nation's decimal currency. Turning the coin over reveals one of Australia's most recognizable wildlife designs, the graceful platypus, created by Stuart Devlin. Swimming through detailed water ripples, the platypus has remained the signature reverse of the Australian 20-cent coin for decades. The denomination 20 and the word cents complete a design admired by collectors around the world. Like other Australian circulation issues, the 1981 20-cent coin was struck from a durable copper-nickel composition, chosen for its strength and resistance to everyday wear. Even so, decades of circulation gradually changed the appearance of most surviving examples. Original mint luster faded, tiny scratches accumulated, high points became smooth, and the once sharp details softened through years of constant use. Collectors know that appearances can be deceiving. Rather than focusing only on the date, experienced numismatists carefully inspect the queen's portrait, the lettering, the rim, and every detail of the platypus reverse. Using magnification, they search for authenticated doubled dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, and other genuine mint-made varieties that may have occurred during production. Most 1981 Australian 20-cent coins proved to be ordinary circulation pieces. Yet every careful examination adds another chapter to the story of Australia's decimal coinage, reminding collectors that sometimes the most familiar coins are the ones that deserve the closest look. The true appeal of the 1981 Australian 20 cents isn't found in its face value, it's found in the journey each coin has taken over more than 4 decades. Every scratch, every worn edge, and every softened design tells the story of a coin that quietly served millions of Australians in everyday life. When these coins were produced, each one began as a carefully prepared copper-nickel planchet before entering the powerful presses of the Royal Australian Mint. With tremendous pressure, the dies transferred the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II onto one side and the famous platypus reverse onto the other. The process was designed for speed and precision, but like any large-scale minting operation, tiny production variations could occasionally occur as dies gradually wore through extended use. That possibility is exactly what keeps collectors interested today. Rather than simply reading the date, experienced numismatists inspect every part of the coin under magnification. They carefully study the queen's portrait, lettering, numerals, rim, and the intricate details of the platypus and surrounding water ripples. Their goal is to identify authenticated doubled dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, and other genuine mint-made varieties that originated during production rather than after the coin entered circulation. The reverse design often becomes the center of attention. Collectors examine the platypus for sharp detail, the texture of the waterlines, the clarity of the denomination, and the strength of the strike. Small differences can make one coin far more interesting than another, especially when those characteristics are confirmed through professional authentication. After more than 40 years, most 1981 Australian 20-cent coins now show obvious signs of circulation. Light scratches cover the surface, the highest points of the design have become smooth, the rim may display small nicks, and the original mint brilliance has faded with time. These are completely normal signs of a coin that fulfilled its purpose in everyday Australian commerce. Whenever something unusual is discovered, professional grading and authentication become essential. Experts determine whether the feature was created during the minting process or resulted from damage after the coin left the mint. That distinction is important because professionally authenticated mint errors, recognized die varieties, and exceptional high-grade examples are generally the pieces that receive greater attention from collectors. It's also worth remembering that most 1981 Australian 20-cent coins found in heavily circulated condition are common coins and are generally worth only their face value. Higher collector premiums are typically associated with authenticated mint-made varieties, recognized production errors, or coins preserved in outstanding condition. Perhaps that's the lasting lesson of the 1981 Australian 20 cents. A coin that once seemed ordinary can become a fascinating window into Australia's decimal currency history, proving that the most rewarding discoveries often begin with a simple decision to look a little closer.